Hi, my name is Riza, and I am responding or refuting my opponent's claim that fossil fuels will always be necessary for transportation, power, and production of everyday products. Now, the main claim itself is not something that's controversial, and it doesn't really provide some kind of controversy. Therefore, it's more of an expository, really, just explaining to us why, indeed, fossil fuels are important in our everyday lives, which in fact it is. Most of us drive cars, and the cars that we have today, most of them are running on fuel. The secondary claims that he used to support these are that the low energy density of alternative fuels will fail to eliminate crude oil as a main source of power for transportation, and that fossil fuels are important for the creation of plastic for everyday products, and fossil fuels will stay for a while, and there's no reason to find another energy source. The first two claims themselves are irrefutable because they are facts. Now down to the first claim. As I said, it's irrefutable. Fossil fuels are able to provide more energy and are more efficient forms of energy for cars, for our vehicles nowadays. However, the real controversy lies in that fossil fuels are diminishing, and there's this need for us to either conserve it or to find alternative use for it. That is where the controversy lies. Now, in his claim, the speaker assumes that the reason behind the current connection between alternative power and fossil fuels and the competition between them is because of their efficiency. No, it is not. It is because since the 1970s, there's been an energy crisis. And mostly the growing population and the increasing demand for fossil fuels are just, the ratio is just too small. If the energy demand, according to an article all the way in the 1970s, if the energy demand were to level off to how it was, then the projection is that there wouldn't be enough fuel. And that's still the same as this article that says in New York Times in 2007, the same projection, that our demands are a lot more than our production of fossil fuels. The second is that the rising gas prices are what pushes us to look for alternative fuels, not the fact that they're going to be better than the fossil fuels themselves. It's just that we can't provide enough for the demand that we have. So that's basically the first claim. And in the second claim, he says that fossil fuels are needed for plastic materials, which we need in everyday products that we have. This is not refutable because it's true. We need that. That's what they use for our phones, for everything that we use every day. But the real controversy is that we would eventually have to choose between whether to use the existing, the rest of our resources, the rest of our fossil fuels on the plastic materials or the transportation. And at the same time, whether or not to find alternative ways to make these things or find other ways to provide for the power. According to a statistics study by the Institute for Energy Research, 45% of gasoline is used in automobiles, 29.5% is used on heating oil, and 20.9% of it is used for other products that produce plastics and synthetics that we need. So eventually we'll have to find a way to replace, or we have to choose between whether or not to use it for power or to use it for the synthetic materials that we need. So that's where the real controversy lies, which is the more important. And then the third claim that our speaker said was that fossil fuels will not run out over the next few years if we use it at the rate that we're using now. And he's running on the assumption that our population is not growing and our demand is not growing. And at the same time, there is no evidence that he provides that fossil fuels will not run out over the years, when in fact, studies have shown that despite the rapid growth of global demand for petroleum products, and the estimates that, despite the growing demand that we have, by 2030, all of our reserves will be exhausted. Even the ones that we're supposed to discover or find out later on, the ones that we don't currently have. And at the same time, the demand from China and India alone are expected to double over the years. Thus, we need to find more ways to find alternative things for our oil, because over the next few years, our oil is going to be exhausted. Our fossil fuels are going to diminish. And the concern today is whether it will be able to support the demand that we have over a long term of time, and that's under the Institute of Energy for Energy Research. Now, in conclusion, my opponent did not address something that is controversial. He just explained to us that basically fossil fuels are necessary for everyday life, but did not address the real controversy around it, which is what to do about it, whether to conserve it or to find alternative ways for it. Thank you.
All right, well, the argument that there's not a dispute, I think, when you cite something as a fact, yes, that's correct. A fact's a fact. But the question is what inferences are being drawn from that fact, and that's where there is some dispute. The advocate's inference is that we won't have any alternatives that will be as effective as fossil fuels for the material, for the demand that we're going to have. And I think that is still an inference, because there are people who are arguing that we can develop these alternatives and get them online in a quick amount of time if we would just stop dilly-dallying about it. So there's that fossil fuels are utilized and that they'll continue to be utilized. I agree with you that that's not in dispute. The question, though, is can they be replaced in a relatively short amount of time? And that's where there needs to be a little bit more development. The efficiency issue, you kind of grant them. I think I do like the idea where you are talking about demands outstripping our production on these issues, that is really one of the sources of the problem. You know what? There's probably a good argument to be made here that says we could be more efficient, we could conserve our resources more effectively, and we could recycle a lot of this material and get additional power from the sources that are available to us. And that really is the way we ought to address this issue. It's not that we have to go to alternatives. Alternatives will have to come about eventually, but the question is, can we function with what we have? And there are ways to make that work. Maybe that would be a good way of going on that particular point. The plastics argument, I think you just say, well, I think you're right. We need fossil fuels for plastics. The only question is, are we going to have sufficient amounts? And once again, I think you've got an okay argument here that says we're going to have to make trade-offs, but we're just going to have to decide how those trade-offs are going to work. Well, that comes down to pricing issues. If the price goes up, for any particular product, people are going to decide they want more or less of it. They're going to conserve and spend their money in the places that they think it's appropriate or inappropriate. I think you just argue here that the marketplace would fix this issue. There's not really anything to worry about on it. The 2030 information, I think, is a little bit alarmist, since you don't really develop any alternatives. I think that you are in essence saying, well, 15 years from now, this is going to be the issue. Now you've got a controversy that's going on there, and I thought your quotes on that were a little incomplete, and if you're going to go ahead and make the argument at that point, it needs to be a little bit more thorough. All right, thank you.